Welcome everyone. This is Renesito Avich, amigo mío, el orgullo de Santiago de Cuba, tresero mayor. He is a great trace player. For those of you who don't know what a trace is, we'll talk a little bit about that right now. But it's my pleasure to introduce Renesito. How you doing today, Rene?
Good. Hey, thank you for having me here. It is a pleasure. And tresero mayor is not a title that I deserve, but I have a lot of passion for the instrument, and yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Okay. Just in case there's anyone who's watching who doesn't know what a tres is, I see you have a cuatro on the wall. Looks like.
Yeah, I have a few. On my wall. The view doesn't let us see it, but I have a Venezuelan cuatro, a cavaquinho. Yeah, I have a few on my wall. Yeah, you want to go ahead and explain what the tres is? The tres is a guitar, first of all. Yeah, so people understand. It's a string instrument, and I'm just taking the chance to explain. And it has three pair of strings. If you play music, you might know the guitar has 6 single strings. The tres has 3 pair of strings, 3 double strings. It is an instrument coming from the Caribbean. The biggest influence, and I would say I'm coming from Cuba, but there is some artists and some people have been discovering tres in the Dominican Republic, and there is a tres in Puerto Rico. But overall, this is our Cuban folk guitar. This is our folk guitar from Cuba, and the name is the Cuban tres. Tres means number 3 in Spanish, so 3 pair of string. And the most important, this is the instrument where the biggest pattern on the Latin music was born. Of the mambo, every pattern you can imagine was born in that little guitar.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's awesome. How old is the tres aproximadamente?
Well, I would say one of the first notice we have from the tres, it's from the 19th centuries, when the Spanish troops were in Cuba, and then there is a documentary about the Changui, and they mentioned the tres about that era, but before that. Because the Spanish troops were in Cuba when there was a war in Cuba. But then before that, before the war in 1867, there was a tres already. So it's around the 19th centuries, the beginning of the 19th centuries.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we know. We always have to count on that, that's what we have on papers, but who knows? It's very old. It's a very old instrument, and in the family there is a few instruments in Africa very similar to a tres, and there's a lot of theory. I'm not a musicologist, but I love my instrument, so I like to research. But yeah, there's a lot of theories, but it's definitely coming from the Caribbean, and definitely coming from Africa as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you say that, so thinking about the role of the tres historically, right, has been playing this part that many people will know as the montuno or the tumbao, or however you want to call it. Is it similar? Is the tres have a similar role that the cuatro does in Puerto Rican music and the cavaquinho in Brazilian music, or is it a little bit different?
That's an interesting question, because in the beginning the tres was now that I know, it had those melodic and very high pitch, or high measure, high pitch, I would say. It's a correct say to say it. If I take the cavaquinho pretty quick in here, let's see if I can get it. For example, the cavaquinho, it's almost an octave in compare with the tres, and the notes are so high. So the tres had always had a melodic and rhythmic function on the orchestra or format, and then by the history, it's getting more and more closer to the cavaquinho or the Puerto Rican cuatro. In my style, it is. You can notice that. But I'm from this generation, you know. I don't think it was before. I think it was very rhythmic, melodic in a way to accompaniment. It was the only harmonic instrument on the format. So you cannot be so free to play, you know, that fast, or to play in those high notes on the fingerboard, because people need you on the harmony part. You know, they need a bass, they need a harmony bass. So yeah, I think it was developing in the time. And I remember, for example, for the country music from Cuba, one of the genre from the country music is la tonada, correct? So in la tonada, the tres, it's what it is. It is a basic rhythmic harmonic part of the format, and then the laúd, is the one who made all of those solos and high pitch notes. So it makes sense. And then tres players from my generation, we are blending in between the lute, the Puerto Rican cuatro. I have a lot of influence for the Puerto Rican cuatro in my playing. And yeah, yeah. And on the folk part, I would say the tres, as a cavaquinho, as a Puerto Rican cuatro, it has a like primary function on those format. Without those instruments, there is not traditional music, you know. So yeah, it kind of it has the same function on that way. Put in that way.
I'm so glad you brought up the element of your own approach to the instrument. That was actually one of my questions. So you may not know this. So anybody watching out there may not know, but I study a little tres. I play some tres, and I've learned a lot from Renesito and some other tres players. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to make a generalization. What you were saying about the older style, which is like the Arsenio Rodriguez style, Nino Rivera. Here in New York City, we have a gentleman by the name of Nelson Gonzalez, who I've also taken lessons from. And he plays in that traditional style. In fact, he studied with Nino Rivera like 50 years ago in Cuba, actually. Playing a very heavy rhythmic style, a lot of downstrokes, right? And less melodic. In those groups, they would always have a piano, right? And in traditional Cuban music, they're actually, well, originally, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was just guitar and tres. There was no piano originally.
Correct.
Piano came later.
Before there was not guitar, just the tres.
Okay. With the changui.
Yeah. Correct. It's more coming from the changui, nengón, kiriba style. Yeah, there was just the tres. But yeah, that's very interesting. Keep going, please.
Oh, I was saying, so I learned a lot from him. And then when I, first met you and I took some tres lessons, I also learned some other different ways. It's such a unique way. It's like, how to compare? It's like learning to play tennis from John McEnroe and then learning to play tennis from, some like Venus, like it's both great styles, but just totally
different generations. Yeah, different generations. Also language. I think that's what you're trying to point. It is a language. It's definitely different. And but yeah, also the strings on Nelson, the way he stroked his instrument, he strummed the instrument is different to my to the way I strum my tres. And for those who doesn't know, the tres, like I mentioned, has 3 pair of string, 3 double strings, but you can put the order of the octave in a way and makes a different tuning. And if I be more specific, for example, I tune in C major chord The tres has the second inversion of C major chord open is G, C, E, correct? And so G has an octave, and then the C is playing and the E is playing. But if I would gonna tune on the traditional, we'll call it like that. We'll do G as it with the octave, the C playing, and the E also in the octave, which is gonna be lower than the G, and it makes such a great sound. I have a tres right here with that. I got a tuner though to perform with it, but I love that the way to tune the tres like that. And as a matter of fact, I've been studying that in the past few months, because I had to record my new album, and I released a song, a changui actually, with Gilberto Santa Rosa, that I had to study the changui. I had to study the language in order to record that. So it's very interesting. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating because, like, again, it's like it tells you how great an instrument it is when you can have two different masters, totally different. It's like but still great in their own way.
Right. Yeah.
Like would you say so? And besides you, and I'm thinking in New York we have Uniel. Who else? Who else would you say represents this modern approach to tres?
Well, before me, more. Well, the biggest figure in the right now living legend is Pancho Amat for sure, and I'm gonna tell you why I think that, and not only because it's one of my mentors, but also because, well, let's start with Pancho, of course. Like I mentioned, one of the living legends. You mentioned Nelson. I have not the pleasure to meet him yet. I'm looking forward to it one day, hopefully soon. And but coming from Cuba, unfortunately, the Cuban music, it's breakdown between the states and Cuba in some way. Living in Cuba, you don't have information of some musicians living in the States. And I can notice that living in the state. It's been 6 years living in Florida, and now I know Nelson. I know a lot of many others, players that I didn't know they exist even, and they are legends. They are people who create this language, these styles. So starting with Pancho, what I admire from Pancho, and these days I see a video of him performing and inspire me to perform, to practice, is how clean he is able to fit a sound on the instrument, to achieve a sound, and it doesn't sound like he's playing classic music. It sounds he's playing Cuban music, but clean. It's something that I look forward when you are in the recording and the production. People is looking forward to that in order to have a good production. So that's picky. That's a little tricky. I would change the word, because the tres, it has a lot of flavor, a lot of rhythm, even a ghost rhythms, like those ghost rhythms you have in your fingerboard. You are not playing a note, but you're doing a rhythm behind on it. I don't know if you guys are following me, but it happens in many styles and many guitar styles also. So in order to achieve a good playing, I think Pancho has clean all of that and simplify the flavor, all of those flavors on a clean sound, very virtuoso, and complete. It's a complete player, and all of the styles. And but yeah, definitely I admire Pancho, and you can tell. But there is one musician not many people mention. He is a little bit, he's for another generation, maybe about 10 years before me, but his name is Enrique Valera. He is from my hometown. He plays cuatro, which is another mystery of the Cuban cuatro, which is pretty much a tres with a second pair of a string. It's not like a Puerto Rican cuatro. The Puerto Rican cuatro has 5 double strings. We have to talk about that later.
This is La Familia Miranda, right?
Correct, Familia Olera Miranda.
Amazing.
So Enrique, it's another of my biggest influence. And
that's not I thought that was just the tres he's playing. It's not just a regular.
No, it's a cuatro. It is a cuatro. You gotta look for it. Okay. So I would say Pancho and Kiki, it's one of those living figures, icons that I have, you know. And then there is you know, all of the tres history that I have been able to study, and you already mentioned some of them. So yeah, for my generation, I would say, and there is more. You mentioned Juniel, and he's another musician that maybe because I'm from Santiago de Cuba, which is the other side of the island. Cuba isn't a small island, but it has a lot to see there. Like I can live in Santiago my entire life, and I cannot meet people from Havana if I'm living there. You know what I'm saying? So Juniel, it's coming from, and not really from Havana, but from that part of the country. And I met actually Juniel in Spain on a festival. I was touring with Elito Rebeso Charangon, and he was touring with a band from New York. And yeah, that's why we met. That's how we met. And so you mentioned Juniel, and there's another colleague that started with me in Havana, San Miguel. He's living in Los Angeles.
Right.
But yeah, man, every time that I open my Facebook or my Instagram, I see everyone, another new player playing amazing. Like
El Lento.
Oh my God, how I can't forget it. No, hold on a second. If this is another, like, if you see the Cuban tres as a tree, this is a big leaf of a tree, El Lento. And it's very interesting how the tree has achieved a language in a different style. El Lento, which means he plays slowly, or maybe it's not slowly. I would call it lovely or sweet, sweeter than anyone on the style. Correct. El Lento. If I would describe El Lento with a style of in the way people can understand the way he plays, it is like a Brazilian bossa nova composer performing with a tres. So it's very sweet. That's very harmonic, with a lot of harmonic substitutions. It's very interesting, but it is also on a style coming more. It's way back El Lento. There is one of the most important musician from Santiago de Cuba. He was performing another instrument, which was a cuatro, but I would say was a cuatro more like a Venezuelan cuatro. It has 4 orders of the string, single string, 4 single strings, and the tuning was very weird. It's almost like a cuatro. Has the 3 first string on one octave, and the last one has like a very like an octave on the bottom. I don't know how to explain it because it's not my first instrument, but see, I'm sitting in my couch. I'm not want to be so comfy so people don't get mad at me, but I do have a cuatro here. Let me say if I okay. So it was something like that. The way it was tuned, it would feel. I don't have the exact notes. This is a Venezuelan cuatro. But so getting in El Lento, he was coming from Maduro, which is an composer, player, cuatro player, guitar player, one of the biggest musicians from Santiago de Cuba, and he has a style of music like no one. So there's many musicians who has learned from Maduro. Nicolás Echevarría Maduro. Y And for example, if you heard El Septeto Santiaguero, the main guy, the guy who writes the arrangement from Santiago de Santiago was his bongocero. So I was in a school for everyone. Everyone who has played with Maduro in Santiago, they're great musicians. They're all great. No one, because you gotta think this guy, for example, imagine you start playing out on leaf with Maduro, and then he goes. He modules to another harmony, and he goes. That's a live with people right in front, and you gotta follow him. So that's why these guys, I'm saying guys, but these are masters. This master has, that formation, and they're so great. That's Lento.
A lot. It's a lot of influences. That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm so happy I was able to, I'm able to call him my friend, and I was able to study. I practice a lot of riff and stuff from Lento. Every time that I see something, I learn something from him. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna back up a second. So the reason, the first time I ever actually saw you play this, I don't think I've told you this before, but I was in Cuba in 2011, and I was doing a recording session with Perochin, the Nieto, NG La Banda, and he was leading the session, and I was recording with him, and I was staying at a una casa particular.
Okay.
And I was watching TV, and they had a show about treseros, and you were on that show. This must have been 2011.
Yeah, it was that exactly year. Yeah. I remember. Yeah, but you go ahead. I have a.
I never. So, and I feel like, okay, I know a lot of tresero. Like I listen to a lot of music. I go to concerts, but I never heard of you. And, so I watched the program. It was really interesting. I think they interviewed you. And then a few years later, maybe more than a few, I saw that you were, I happened to be in Florida, and I saw that you were like playing live, and I was like, incredible, I got to go see this. So, and that was the first time I think I met you, and we did a little descarguita.
We met in Siesta Key, correct?
Yeah.
Here in Sarasota.
So I was wondering if you could talk about like getting your start in, or transitioning into the United States, your career into the United States, and how that was different, obviously, from performing and being an artist in Cuba. I know that's a big question, but maybe,
it is.
Yeah,
definitely. Well, 2011, they were celebrating the centenary of I think it was Arsenio Rodriguez, if I'm not mistaken. There was a chess player, one of our legends. It was gonna be 100 years old, and they were celebrating that in Cuba, and they did a competition, a national competition, and so it took like 3 months doing that competition. I was not gonna go. As a matter of fact, for some reason, El Lento was in that competition. And that was one of the main reasons that I didn't want to go, because I knew the level of it. And so having him on the competition, I was still learning. And so somehow we got the three of us, El Lento, San Miguel, and myself, as a 3 winner of the whole competition after all. And so being a winner of the year, they did a lot. We did a lot of shows in TV, and those were great years. We also made an album that has not been released yet.
Wow.
The 3 of us, yeah, and
nice.
I think it's gonna be out pretty soon.
We need that.
And yes. Myself, I am recording. I am recording those as an independent, probably pretty soon. But yeah, definitely there's an album coming out, and because they sent me already the papers for it, and so and then around the 11, the 12, 13, those were great years. Of course, I was performing with Elito Rebe su Charangon. It's one of the biggest, I would call salsa orchestra, but Elio Rebe, so people can understand the style of music. But they play actually changui, which is one of the grandfathers of the salsa music. And his father, Elio Rebe, was one of the first countrymen going from Guantanamo, the southeastern part, to Havana with all of this information, and bring it to the big orchestra, 4 trombones, 2 keyboards, 4 drummers, a bass player. It's a big orchestra. So I was able to be part of it. It's also an orchestra with 60 years of career. So, and I was touring around the world with them. But somehow I was ready to go and to do my own career. And I came here in 2014. And the first thing you can notice my accent, but I did not speak not even 50% of the what I'm speaking right now. I can speak a little more fluent than that time for sure. So I think that was important. I think for an artist moving to America, it is important to communicate not only with music, and it happens to me. I had to learn the language, and so I also had to change my repertoire. But as a matter of fact, it was a repertoire that I was looking for. I did mention that I'm from Santiago de Cuba, and I recognize people really liked the repertoire from my hometown. When you mention the Buena Vista Social Club, everything clarifies for everyone because it's events everyone knows. And but what not many people knows is a big part of the repertoire from the Buena Vista is coming actually from my hometown. So that was something I had in my favor, I believe, and I learned a lot in all of these years. Like I'm coming from Cuba, but a big percent of the concepts of the Cuban music I learned it here. I studied a lot in YouTube. I
Really?
studying a lot. Yeah, a lot. I learned how to play maracas in YouTube.
What? No.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not. I'm not ashamed to say this. It wasn't a Cuban. It wasn't
What?
an Spanish player, and he did a great class about the maracas, and I just learned how to play the maracas on YouTube. So
that is a surprise.
I bet I think what happens in Cuba, everyone plays everything they want great. Like if you see a maraca player, as a great maraca player, you don't want to play maracas. You just want to keep playing tres because everyone's is focused on be good on their own. And so coming here and the concept of I was cooking to have here, I had to learn a lot of instruments that I had to play a little bit in Cuba, but I did all the master I did it here on the University of College of YouTube.
Wow, that's surprising. I assume that you came with knowing how to play.
Yeah, I mean the bongos. I knew how to play clave. Bongos I did practice a lot in Cuba, and the percussion it's one of my passions. I like a lot. The percussion is one of my passions. So yeah.